Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about the anatomy of the soul and how it is constructed and how we are bringing in different parts of it. So we talk a lot on this channel about the soul being outside the body. So I want to kind of go through that a little bit and explore that, because the minute you say that, people feel like it's confusing, right? Because the soul's supposed to be in the body, and when our human consciousness will tell us that when we die, the soul leaves the body. Well, if the soul's not in the body, what's going on? How does that exactly work? So I'm going to frame it a different way. If I say that the unconscious part of your soul is in your body, your human consciousness is just the unconscious part of your soul. If we go with the one soul instead of having multiple souls and then one big oversoul. So, and you'll see that depicted both, people see it kind of differently. It depends on who's explaining it, but they're all kind of similar. It's either if you believe in one big flame in a sense, or a lot of little flames making up that big flame, and how big you want your flame to be. But it pretty much, it's all kind of very similar, right? I did talk to one man once, and I was at a retreat he did years ago, and he talked about everyone being part of the same soul, which was kind of an interesting kind of way to look at it too. Okay, so if we think about the unconscious part of our soul being in the body, right? That is, because usually I'll break it out to soul and human consciousness, but I want to kind of start to merge the human consciousness back in a little bit, because it doesn't go anywhere. It is still there. Sorry for the beeping. I was making a pie. I was heating up some pie. Okay, so when we talk about the soul being outside the body, think about how vast your energy field is. Now, when we're in our human consciousness, we can only see this much, right? We can't see our entire field consciously. We're not understanding it. We're not interpreting it consciously. We're interpreting everything on an unconscious basis. So we're not really understanding everything we're doing. We're not really understanding how we're putting things forth. We're not really getting the full picture of everything. We're only getting a piece of it, in a sense, at a time. And we don't really understand it. We can't put it together yet, because we don't have the consciousness to put everything together. We don't understand. We are in a very fractal part of ourselves, right? So if you think about your soul being fractaled apart, and it's not just fractaled apart in this timeline, it's fractaled apart in every timeline you're playing in. It's a multidimensional you, in a sense. There's lots of us's everywhere, and it's all playing in different times, different galaxies in a sense, and everyone's kind of separated off. Now, if your human consciousness is the one in the body and everything else kind of floats around outside. So that's when we talk about embodiment. Why isn't the soul in the body? Why isn't all of my soul in the body and I just got the human part in there? Because the human part's a very teeny, teeny part. It's itty bitty. And there's too much crap in the way for everything else, right? So what'll happen to a lot of people, pretty much, I guess everyone in a sense, right before they'll die, in human terms, before they die. And really our whole ascension process is sort of, dying and living again, rebirthing, the rise of the phoenix kind of energy. And that's kind of what ascension is. It's death of the ego in a sense, and then more of your soul comes into the body. You're allowing more of the soul in the body because it's a more hospitable environment for it, right? And that's what starts to recode the body, recode the DNA. So your body starts going haywire. And you can actually raise the body vibration to a certain point to anchor in realities that would be classified, I guess, as higher dimensional realities. Your colors look different. Rainbows you see more of. You start to see the magic in everything. You start to understand how things work, how you created everything, and how on a very nonlinear geometric fragments of how everything gets put together, how realities will come in piece by piece, and they would maybe had been building years before you actually saw them come in. But in our human consciousness, we couldn't see it that way. We didn't have the patience to wait for them. We didn't have the patience to see why we were creating so many things that didn't make any sense. We just didn't have that capacity. We didn't have the consciousness. Not as a judgment, just as an observation. We did not have the consciousness to see it. So once you do, then you have to be really responsible for everything that happens after that. So if we talk about the purest aspects of your soul, right? The higher aspects of your soul, your Atlantean aspects, your Lemurian aspects, all of those aspects you have, your Christ frequency, your God particle, all those different things coming in the body, getting activated in the body, it starts to clear out everything that's not that frequency, right? So, it can be like like a video game where it's kind of snaking through and breaking up stuff to be released. So when it starts breaking up stuff to be released, it's going to be breaking up the programming, the human programming to be released, because that's what's anchoring everything in. That's what's anchoring you in the lower timelines, in a sense, and not lower as a comparison, just lower as a frequency. That's why you're anchored in the human timelines, because your body's anchored there. So the more you open yourself up to consciousness, the more you start to surround yourself with that. Your body is able to support more of your soul. And that then breaks up more programming, so more of your soul can come in. So if you think of it as just, when you think about it as just one soul, one body, it kind of starts to distort it a little bit, because it's so much more vast than that. Think about it as lots of aspects of yourself, lots of parts of your soul all around you, and you're trying to bring them all back in. You're trying to get them all back in the body, and that's the embodiment process we talk about. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get your whole soul in your body. Now, that's a lot of stress for the body, because it technically wasn't built for that. Technically, I guess it is built for that, because it's trying to do it, but it takes a long time, It takes a long time for it to recode. It takes a long time to get your vibration up, and you have to clear the distortions. It's a continual always process. It never ends. You have to clear the distortions around those aspects. Right? Because none of the aspects are 100% pure. Even Christ's frequency is not a pure aspect of yourself, in a sense, because it has a distortion of saving people. It's a savior. It can be a distorted savior energy and not a loving. The flip side of that is a divine love energy, but the other side of that is that savior energy. So you have to clear that within yourself too. So when we talk about bringing all these things in, it kind of goes back. If you want to think about it like, we talk about like holing, that's basically what you're doing. And when people talk about, you'll see a lot of human beings, I usually don't say the being part, talk about, I'm gonna go into another galactic phase. When we talk about the soul, and we talk about how it relates to the Akashas. So I was going to do a separate video on Akashas, but I think I'm going to just throw it in here. Every aspect of you has its own Akash. So when people talk about, I want to clear my Akash, or clearing the Akash, we're going to read your Akash. And what I have said on this channel lots of times is, don't get too bogged down on someone saying, I can see your Akash. They can only tap into one they have a frequency to match and tap into. You have lots of Akashas. You have a Galactic Akash, you have Lemurian Akash, you have an Atlantean Akash, you have, your Mermaid Akash, you have your Christ Akash. Keep going. You have so many. You value Galactic Akashas. You have Akashas of every aspect of you everywhere. So when you start having remembrances, people call them like a flash of a past life or something, right? Or something, it doesn't look exactly the way it doesn't look the same. Like, it can be a dream that looks a little flipped or distorted in a sense, because it's in a different timeline, it's in a different frequency. But we've had those dreams where we know somebody is somebody, but they don't look like that. Like, I know that was John, but it didn't look like John in the dream, but I know that was John. And because you could feel the energy of that person, sort of the soul of that person. So you knew, that was John. I just didn't know that. I knew it, but it didn't look like him. Because in that timeline, he looks different. But it's the energy you're reading. So that's how you know who everybody is. The same thing when you meet people on the street. You know who people are immediately because of the timeline or of the energy they're giving off. It doesn't matter what they look like. Humans care about what people look like. Souls don't give a shit what anybody looks like. It doesn't matter. We're all born into certain bodies for certain reasons, but it doesn't matter to the soul. So when you think about when you have a memory, and that's a lot of what this process is too, you'll start unlocking sacred remembrances. And if someone's achieved different frequencies, then when you hear their voice, when you're around them, it'll start to unlock those parts of you. That's really why so many people share about consciousness, because it unlocks other people's consciousness. When you listen to the frequency of someone's voice, when you read a certain book, when you go in that seeker phase trying to understand more, all of that's going to bring you into a higher state of consciousness, which is going to start recoding your DNA. The environment affects your body. That's human terms known, you know. Even human science will say that. The environment affects the cells. The cells in your body are affected by the environment of which you put it in. Consciousness is just the environment you're going to put it in, and it's going to start to morph the cells. It shifts the DNA, it changes the DNA, it unlocks the DNA. And that's when you start to remember certain things. You start to remember, like I know for me, when I'm clearing my human Akash, I remember stuff from 40 years ago. And very trivial stuff sometimes, like the cat food we used to give our cat in the 70s. It was really obscure brand of cat food. It's not even around anymore, but I'll just think about it all of a sudden because I've unlocked that part of my Akash and it's clearing. If you have because the memory part is it's the clearing part. Some of us will have tears that come with a lot of that stuff. It's the emotional part of it. A lot of that will come with it. When it all starts kind of coming out, for us to clear it cellularly from the body, that raises our vibration, to have that good cry, to, bring all that stuff up so it can clear. So when you continue to do that and do that and do that, you'll start to remember more. You start to lose your human memories, and that's part of clearing your human Akash when you can't remember. That's when a lot of people get to certain stages at sort of their end of their agreement to be here, when they're kind of done. Everyone has an agreement of when they're going to go. And when they get to certain parts of that agreement, they start to lose their memory because they're starting to clear their Akash before they go. They're starting to clear all that. But if you're having memories of a different life, in a sense, it looks different. You're clearing that part of the Akash. That's what sacred remembrances really are. They're connecting you with that aspect of yourself. They're bringing that in for you and clearing that at the same time. In a sense, clearing the Akash that's related to it. So everything can kind of merge together. The Akashic records are within you. They're in your DNA. They're locked in your DNA. Your whole everything is in your energy field. It's in your energy field and it's in your DNA. You can see everything. That's why people who are very conscious can see everything. You can't fool anybody, and technically you can't do it when people are not conscious, because on an unconscious level they're still reading it. They still understand when something's off. That's why we've always said that old adage, oh, I did it, but I knew better. I knew better because what the words that were being said and the frequency of which they were being said with, they didn't match up. So I knew better in a sense because it didn't sound right. It sounded off to me because it was off. So you start to look at the frequency of something and not the words. The words don't really mean anything. Humans like the words, but the words don't mean anything. It's the frequency of which they're being said and where the whole energy field's giving off. It's a totally different way to kind of communicate and a way to be. So really feel into your soul and bringing it in and every aspect of it in. And the more we kind of explore that, it's a very organic process. You don't really have to try to do it. You just have to be open to doing it. And that's kind of what awakening is. It kind of starts to, your awakening process, usually it's pretty traumatic for most people, to get them to unanchor from human realities. It kind of has to be. Normally you kind of get tossed down in a sense. Everything gets it's a very disenchanted reality. When you look at the human realities, it gets very disenchanting and you don't really want to be part of them anymore. You want to kind of go on and do something else, but you don't know what that is. You just know there's more than just this. It's almost like the veils start to go. Also part of clearing the Akash. It's all kind of combined. It's all a process that's working together. You don't have to try to embody in different aspects. You just embody in different aspects because that's what you're here to do. Okay? So I think I'm going to leave it at that and keep practicing the art of intuition.